Out here, the woods don't lie. Every trail tells a story, and we're here to read it. This is the Field Days podcast, where passion meets habitat. Hosted by Jason Say, whitetail enthusiast and food plot guru. Brought to you by Magnet Outdoors Premium Food Plot Seeds, because big bucks start with a well-planned strategy.
Hello and welcome to the Field Days podcast. I have a great guest today. He's actually a former employee of mine. You don't hear that all the time where, it's your former employee, but I guess he doesn't hate my guts or anything. So I have Kyle Campbell on the show today. He was my photographer, videographer. He got to do more with food plots than most guys ever really want to do. But Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good time. We were talking before this. And it's like, all right, we gotta be serious. We can't be goofing around. We got to focus here. But Kyle and I like to have a good time, like to goof around a little bit. But we have a great topic today. So we're gonna talk about a bunch of different things. We're gonna talk about what Kyle's been up to since he moved back to Missouri. We're going to talk about then what our plans are for this year. What my food plot plan is. Is there anything I'm doing different? What my strategy is going to be? Kyle's a relatively new food plotter. It's kind of cool to watch him getting more and more interesting, because when he filmed for me, he used to get tired. It was the thing he hated the most, was filming and photographing food plots all the time. But now as he's getting a little older and wiser, he's getting a little bit more into it.
I don't know if you should be excited, because it's like every question I'm like, oh, I'll just call Jason real fast.
I'll see what he's
and
doing.
Then you're like, you answer the phone. You're like, what do you want? And I'm like, hey, do I spray this plot or not?
No, it's all good. It's good for me to see you finally coming around. But anyway, so we're going to talk about that. So real quick, Kyle, again, welcome to the show. And we're going to take a quick break, say thanks to a couple sponsors. We'll be right back. I plant over 30 acres in food plots every single year, and I cannot afford to be losing time with equipment that is not reliable or gets the job done. And I'm proud to have Coons Engineering as my equipment sponsor here at Field Days. Their equipment is built like a tank, from their mower that I can create a new plot to mow my perennial plots, to their cultipackers, to the chisel plow that you see me using all the time that I use with just my quad to break ground and plant new food plots. If you're looking for good quality food plot equipment, I encourage you, check out the very best at kunzeng.com. There's nothing more I love than chasing big bucks, and one of the biggest game-changing products for me and making me more successful is Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras. Anybody knows big mature whitetail, especially in high pressure states like Pennsylvania, they're not going to put up with much from humans. So the best thing we can do is stay out of the woods, stay out of that property when it gets close to hunting season. And the Moultrie Mobile cellular trail cameras have been a game changer for me. They have affordable plans, great cameras. I encourage you to check out the entire line at moultriemobile.com. Okay. So we are back, and I have Kyle Campbell here with me, and I have two quick plugs I got to talk about real quick. I want to talk about my upcoming documentary. As most of you guys know that listen to me, I produce a documentary every year, and it's just been really cool. It's challenged me doing this filming for 18 years. It's been nice to get a change of pace, right? And that's that's what I'm doing now, and producing that documentary has really kind of been a challenge. And what I try and do is tell the story of the whole season and hopefully end with a big buck. And my new one's coming out this September. It'll be on Carbon TV, Waypoint TV, Realtree 365, of course, all the all-in channels and stuff like that. It's going to be called No Fear. It's going to be all about me doing crazy things and deciding to start a business and putting it all back into it after I was doing pretty well and rolling it all back in. My wife's thrilled, but started the seed company Magnet Outdoors with Wilson and Steve Scott, and it's going to tell that story of starting that company and then me chasing my big bucks. So that's going to be coming out in September. So I want to give a little plug for that. Then the second thing I had was a lot of you guys have already bought tickets. I just announced it this week. I think we sold 100 already. I'm doing a whitetail habitat extravaganza, and it'll be January 31st here in Northwest Pennsylvania. I did one of these a few years ago, sold it out. Now I could only fit 120 people, and we sold it out in 6 hours.
But we found a new venue. We can fit 500 to 600 people. And I have another guest speaker that's going to be with us. His name's Jason Lapardis. Great guy. He's going to be talking cover, timber stand improvement, anything habitat, and then I'm going to be doing the food plots, the hunting. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have Coons Engineering is going to be there, 12-point hunting blinds, I believe Realtree, ScentLock. Some of my sponsors are going to have booths there and stuff, and some guys as well. And so it's going to be a great all-day seminar. I tell guys this is not a, walk around and talk to, it's a lot of learning. Bring your notebook and paper and pen, and be ready to take notes, because it's like drinking from a fire hose. But it is a great day if you own property and you're interested in managing your property, whatever it might be. It's a full day action pack. So it's the Whitetail Habitat Extravaganza. You can buy your tickets. Like I said, we're only selling 500 of these. Is January 31st is the date. And you can buy your tickets at magnetoutdoors.com. And if you have any issues, you can always reach out to me. But we look forward to hopefully seeing you at that event. So that's it. That's my shameless plugs on those two things. And we're gonna move on, and we're gonna get to our guest here, Kyle Campbell. And so I'll give a little background on Kyle. Kyle came and worked for me. How long did you work for me? 4 years, 5 years?
Like right at 4 almost.
Yeah.
I think I was like a few months short of 4.
Yeah. So he was in Missouri, and and I was looking for a full-time photographer, camera guy, and I had a lot of applicants, and Kyle was eager, and he moved out to Pennsylvania, and we had a blast. We had a great time, and he was out there, and he ended up having Callie, and got a little homesick, and the missus wanted to move back to Missouri, and it's all good. A lot of times you don't hear that, when somebody used to work for you. I was disappointed to lose them, but we've stayed in touch and remained good friends. And Kyle did a great job, but Kyle's not done with me yet. If you watch a lot of the videos, he thought he was getting away from producing food plot stuff, because he said it was the most boring thing in the world. But now he's doing some stuff. I'll let you talk to about what he's doing on the side, but he still produces a lot of the videos that you see on Magnet Outdoors, as well as All In, our product reviews, even some of the hunts and stuff. He's still doing a bunch of work for me, and started his own little media company. So Kyle, I'll let you talk a little bit about your time with me, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, so like Jason said, I moved out to Pennsylvania at the beginning of 2018 to be his photographer, videographer, and it's kind of crazy because all through high school I just filmed my own hunts with my mom's little handy cam. I actually think one time I filmed over my high school graduation. Like it's like kids are walking across the stage. So that's kind of how I got into it. I always watched the Realtree guys growing up, and I always wanted to be like them, doing the commentating and everything, doing something serious, and never really thought it was going to turn into anything. And it was actually, I think it was John Collins that I was sitting in the stand one time, and John sent me a post that Jason had, said he was looking for a photographer, videographer, and I applied for it. And after everything was all said and done, moved, like Jason said, I moved out to Pennsylvania to do that. And what it started out a hobby became a full-time job. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and we had some great times. I know I missed sharing a tree stand with Jason, and he's yelling at me to turn the GoPro off or quit messing with stuff all the time.
We'll have to tell
I
that
missed
story. That was only the very first hunt I think we had. I'll tell that story.
it was the very first trip. I don't think it was the very first hunt, but it was the very first trip, and it was our first day in Illinois. And like, what are you doing?
Leave
Knock
it.
it off.
Then you did it again. I'm just leave it alone. And he was adjusting his GoPro. I mean, and I'm finally, what are you doing? And then just leave it alone. I won't use the same language I use, but yeah, it was. We had a lot of good times, a lot of funny stuff.
But yeah, like, so what turned out to, he wasn't really yelling at me or anything, but now we joke around, and it's just like every time he calls me, he's like, "Are you leaving it alone lately?" or whatever. And
just leave it alone. Yeah.
So what started out as a boss and a employee turned out to be a really great friendship, I do believe. And I'm still doing stuff like Jason said, still doing some stuff when he films and has videos for me. I actually had to start my own, didn't really have to, but after I moved back to Missouri, I felt like I needed to stay in the outdoor industry, and still liked doing some stuff and filming some stuff. So I started my own LLC, KLC Media LLC. And still editing videos through that, and doing some other projects for Jason, and for some other companies too, but mostly Jason. So he's still my employer, in some ways. So can't quite get away from him, but not that I want to or anything. But so yeah,
Yeah.
so that's going good, and I have my own YouTube channel doing kind of vlog style hunting and stuff like that, and yeah, it's all going pretty well, and doing photography on the side, and starting to try to take pictures of people, which is a lot more difficult than taking pictures of hunting products and hunting situations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
No, I've been following you, and you've been doing a ton of stuff. But yeah, no, our time together was great. I mean, I wish it was longer, but life hits you, and you make changes. But that's why if you do business and you do stuff the right way and you treat people the right way, I feel I treated Kyle right, and Kyle
oh
always
yeah,
treated me right, and there was no hard feelings. I mean, I was disappointed, but that's life, and that's the way it goes. But he wasn't able to get away from me that easy, and like I said, the day of the internet, I can upload footage and he can edit it for me, being, 10 hours away and all that good stuff. But just stayed close, and I appreciate Kyle. And I thought, it'd be cool to have mix it up a little bit. Usually I was telling him, I was like, man, I usually have these real sciencey, geeky guys on that, talk about your magnesium and calcium sulfate levels and things like that. I said, well, we'll take a step back and just have a more of a laid back show, and have somebody who's actually, Kyle's planted food plots. He's been around me, but probably still a little bit of a novice when it comes to learning, food plots. But it's funny, he's calling me a lot now, and hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, let's have a podcast on and talk about it and stuff. So yeah, Kyle and I, we had a lot of good times, a lot of fun hunts together, and a lot of funny stories, and yeah, so we're gonna have him. We're gonna talk all about that. But yeah, his YouTube is KLC Media. He's gonna be sponsored by Magnet Outdoors this year for food plot
woo!
seeds. So yeah, so one of his
I'm
first
excited about
sponsors.
that.
So yeah, you didn't have a choice. I was like, well, if you want to keep working for me, you're gonna plant Magnet. So anyway, so yeah, so it's all good, and I'm glad to have Kyle on here. The the one thing, I did before we got into what we're doing and what our plan is this year. I did want to talk a little bit because guys do ask me this a lot. They say, how do you get into doing what you're doing? How do what any tips on filming and filming your hunts and things like that? So, Kyle, it's what you do. I mean, I have some advice too, is to guys that are getting into it and they're filming. But any advice you have on filming your hunts and what guys should be trying to do when they're starting out, when they're trying to lay down good footage and put a story together? Any advice you have?
I mean, I don't know if I would call it advice, because I don't particularly see myself as someone that likes to give advice on stuff like that, because I don't think I'm an expert or anything. But I will say, just take your camera out every time. I know it's a haul. I know it sucks sometimes, but it's the one time where you don't want to do it. And it happened to me last year. It literally happened to me. I was chasing this one buck last year, and I called him Fat Brisket. Whole story. The video's up or whatever, but if you want to watch, but and the one time, like, it was opening day of rifle season, and I left my tree arm, which had my swivel head, in my tree, because I was gonna go to that hunt that same tree. So I'm like, I'll just leave everything here, come back. Well, I got that deer on camera heading to a different area of the farm. So I'm like, oh no, I need to go over here. And I didn't want to go get that camera. But it's that stuff because it was in the timber and stuff and whatever. It's a long story. But ended up going to this blind where I needed the tripod and I needed my fluid head. Well, it was in the tree. And I'm like, whatever, I'll just go. It was 70 degrees. I kind of really wasn't expecting him to be out. And here he shows up, and I shoot the second biggest deer of my life, and I didn't get any of it on film just because I didn't take it. It was like one of those days where, but I would just say, just accept the grind, accept taking your crank camera out, and that's really the only advice. I know it sucks sometimes, but that's really the only advice that I can really come up with off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, and I think that is good advice. I'm going to tell guys out there, here's the deal. Everybody thinks they want to film their hunts, right? Everybody thinks that oh man, I'm going to film my hunts. And then it turns into work, right? It
Oh yeah.
turns into a grind when you're having to take a tree arm and take this in and take that in and and do all of it. And a lot of guys just don't make it because it's not fun for them. And I'll be honest with you, if you're not having fun, I believe there's guys that they're meant to film. They love it. They love that's part of it to them. But a lot of guys, it's not. Like they want to go kill a deer. They like the idea, right? The idea
Yeah.
of having footage. But when it comes down to grinding it out, like you just talked about, it's tough. That's tough even for guys like us. I'll be honest. When I first started doing this, I was one of those guys. I'm just like, man, I just want to hunt. I just want to kill stuff. But I've grown over the years that, man, like having everything on film and being able to put a good story together, I enjoy that,
Yeah.
and so I'll tell guys, do it. And there's gonna be days that you're grinding and you're like, oh man, why do I do it? And you might, and if you're not having fun, don't do it, like,
Yeah.
don't, I mean, it's got to be something that you really enjoy doing. And it's what we enjoy is the end product, right? Like being able to sit back and say, put that story together. But yeah, so that was some good points on it, is be willing to grind it out. But I'll talk a little bit too, and you can chime in on this stuff. A lot of people, and I've even moved to this since you've left, I do a lot of self-filming. The hard part for me, I'm hunting in Pennsylvania, so I might have to hunt 70 different sits before I, when you left, you were a full-time employee for me. And when you left, I'm like, okay, some of my business shifted. Do I have enough work for, and so I was like, well, I think I can potentially self-film. And I've done that a lot, and I've done fairly well. Now the footage isn't as good as, you have a cameraman sitting there and gets you the
Mm.
perfect shot. But there's a lot of guys that are self-filming out there, and self-filming can be difficult. But if you practice it, I'm getting pretty good at it. It's like anything, you start to get better at it. So I like to self-film. I tell guys, you probably agree with me on this, the GoPro has been one of the best things ever. Back in the day, 18 years ago, we would do an interview, we'd set the camera up, we'd stand out there. Hey, I'm Jason saying today, here we are, it's Wired Outdoors, we're gonna hunt here and blah blah blah. It's gonna be awesome, right? And what the GoPro's really done is, man, it's on the fly, it's natural. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm heading to my stand, you're holding it, and it takes great video, right? You can take
Yep.
4K with your GoPros. The audio on it has even come a long ways. That for a hunting show, the GoPro, I just tell guys, get it. Now when it comes to filming your hunt, everybody's starting out on different budgets. GoPros aren't great for filming your hunt because you're not gonna be able to zoom in with them. But man, we do. Oh geez, I'll bet you 60% of our shows now are done on a GoPro, all the videos, and things like that. And then everything else with the deer and stuff is a regular camera with the tree arm and all that kind of stuff. So that would be, I don't know if you have anything to chime in on that, on equipment or anything. I know you use I always say this wrong, DSLR, DLSR, whatever it is, you use the high,
DSLR.
yeah, you use the John Collins, you always give me heck for you sound like, but yeah, and I know you use some of that, and that can be really hard. I tell guys that are starting out, get a mid-range, type
Yeah.
camera that, you have an autofocus and a manual focus, and there's, you got to be careful on those too. But any advice you have on equipment for telling a story?
No, I mean, you nailed it there, a GoPro, and I've told several people that, like, "Hey, I wanna get into filming my hunts," and the first thing I was like, it sounds crazy, but honestly, you have a phone in your pocket too that takes great video, everyone does nowadays, and you can use that as a GoPro or second angle or whatever, but if you really wanna buy just a camera and you don't know where to start or whatever, GoPro is a great because everyone can take a GoPro to their stand, and, I mean, you can even face it out, and you'll still be able to see, like, yeah, no, you won't be able to zoom in 300 yards and count the tines on a deer or whatever, but you could still get it, and then, with that video, you'll know if you wanna upgrade or if you wanna keep doing it or whatever, and then just buy what you can afford, set yourself a budget. There's tons of cameras, and they're all great, from $600 to $10,000 cameras. It's just whatever you wanna afford, obviously, you're gonna get what you pay for, of course, but, I tell guys just get what you can afford, set aside, I don't know, 100 or $2 with that budget, buy the camera, and then buy the mic,
Yeah.
and that's basically how you can get started. I've told several people that, "What's your budget?" They say $800. I'm like, "Alright, buy this $500 camera, buy this $200 mic, and you're good to
Yeah.
go."
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. What I really like now too is, and I'll tell guys, I really love using my GoPro as the second camera angle on me.
Mhm.
I'll use the
Yep.
bigger camera filming the deer, and then I have the GoPro, so when you're standing up, and it's just GoPros have made hunts way more authentic, right? And this is true. And I'll be honest, back in the day when we first started, you go back and one thing we never reenacted was the celebration or the after shot. Like, I'd never do that. I said, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to act like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. That's all natural. But when you used to use the cameras back in the day, you didn't have the GoPro, you'd have to, reenact drawing your bow, right? And things like that. Well, now, man, just having a GoPro there and here comes a deer, you hit record on it and it's catching the whole thing as you're moving your camera and you're doing that. It just makes the hunt way, way, way more authentic. So that's just a couple tips for me on hunting. And the last thing that I'll add on this is, I get this question all the time. How do I do what you're doing? How do I get where you're at and things like that? And it's not easy. But what I'll say is, people need to like you and you need to be yourself. If you're going into it and you're saying, okay, I watch Michael Waddell and Waddell's great. You can't go into it and say, I want to be Michael Waddell.
Yeah.
I want to be this guy. I want to be Jim Shockey. I want to be, those guys are, once in a lifetime guys. You have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. And either people are going to like you or they don't, and so that's why I tell guys, you can see a guy when he's trying to put on a show and it's not, okay, that isn't who that guy is. He's just, he's trying to impress for the camera and stuff. People sniff that out. So my only advice is be authentic, like be who you are, and either people will like you or they won't like you, and that's okay, right? So that's just some tips for me on film, and I get a lot of questions on those. You anything to add before we get into what our plans for hunting this year is when it comes to filming?
No, you nailed it. Be yourself and get good quality stuff and do it constantly. That's another main thing. You're gonna, I mean, and I'm a victim of this too, or guilty of this too. I put out 2 or 3 shows a year, videos a year or whatever, and that's not enough. If you want to get good at it, you want to get big, you need to be consistent. And that's one of my goals this year is to be a little bit more consistent with it. If you do put out 1 show a year, you need to make it really good, like a documentary style, or like I've seen a lot of those videos that, I've been following a couple guys too that they do 1 video a year, but they tell the whole story of the whole year, and it's it's a kind of a documentary style kind of deal, and they're really awesome, and they get a ton of views, and that's basically all I got with that is be consistent and have good quality.
Yeah, there's really 2 different ways. And I mean, I was this way. I mean, we were producing 40, 50 shows a year for a while. And honestly, like, I didn't get burned out. I just needed a change. I was doing it for 18 years. And, and I shot that really big buck, here in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, man, I've always considered doing a documentary if I'm ever going to do it. The footage, I mean, 170 different times for him. I had the whole season. And I'm glad I did it, because then we put it together and it's like, you know what, I want to do 1 of these each year. Now I still produce 15, 20 shows a year and a documentary, from product reviews and different things like that. But yeah, usually my documentary is my whole whitetail season, and so there are different ways of doing it. There's different styles. Find your style, find what fits. I'd tell guys it's easier to do that short style and get familiar with filming and editing and how you put it together before you jump into like, hey, I want to produce a documentary. Those can be a little bit more tough, but yeah, there's just, again, be who you are. Like what there are guys out there, and it's funny now, Magnet Outdoors, I'm on the other end. I have guys, TV shows calling me for me to be their sponsor, right? So now I'm on the other end because I've always been doing that. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and you can tell I talked to 3 different shows, and there's the guy's kind of like me, and then there's these guys that are kind of like way different. And then there's this one guy, you can just tell he's super creative. Like, he's not going to be on camera talking a lot. He's all about the shots, the video, but that's his personality, right? And so you have to let your personality show through and be authentic, and whatever that is, and sometimes guys have to find their, when you're filming, you don't maybe know what your style is or what you like or what you want to do, and just get out there. Like Kyle said, start filming, start laying down footage, go take a class on outdoor. I know, used to be, what was it, Become One, does film classes and things like that, for hunting. Go take a couple classes and just, have some of that, or pick people's brains. But But anyway, we're going to move on. So we've talked about that enough. But, if you are looking at it, is cool. Kyle and I both come from that background, and Kyle always was naturally, he loved it. I grew to love it. I grew to really like laying down footage and having all those memories on film. But anyway, we'll move on from that. I thought that was something cool to talk about before we got into what our plans are for hunting this year, if we got a shooter buck yet or not, and all that good stuff. So Kyle, again, as I said before, Kyle's he's kind of starting out, and he's planted some food plots before. He's obviously been with me, and his head turned numb from watching me plant food plots and things like that. But hopefully he learned a little bit. But what are your plans this year? I know you have some property in Missouri. You've been pretty successful. You've taken some nice bucks, and I know you're starting to play more and more with food plots. So what are your plans this year? We've talked a little bit about it, but let's just for the listeners, talk about like what you're planning to do.
Yeah, so I hunt a family farm. And well, my main farm's a family farm, and it's a lot of ag. So it's hard. It was really hard for me to get into food plots because there's nowhere to put a food plot because it's all corn or beans basically. Um, but last year I got a hold of them all, and we had this old cabin, and it's a yard, but it was a gravel road driveway to the cabin and everything. But I tried to turn it over last year and plant a food plot in the front yard there, the old cabin, and it didn't grow because it's basically my fault. I didn't prep the ground. I didn't, do a soil sample. I know. I think I just, what I do, I sprayed the yard. I tilled it up, or had a buddy till it up because I don't have any equipment my own. So I paid a friend to go till it up for me. And he kind of, he did break ground in some spots, but other spots he didn't really break ground. And then I just went and threw some seed out. And I think I just threw like 2 bags of triple 20 out and called it good. And then it didn't rain for I think like 64 days or something like that. Like
That'll do
after,
it.
yeah. So it all in all, it didn't grow at all hardly. I mean, I think I had maybe some winter wheat that was like maybe like an inch tall at the end of the year or whatever. But this year, I got a buddy that got a hold of me, and he just bought a butcher shop, and on this butcher shop came with 35 acres. And he texted me. He said, "Hey man, if you need a place to hunt this year, you can hunt here. I'm not gonna have time. I'm gonna be dealing with all these deer that are coming in and stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, it's close to my house. I don't have to drive 2 hours and stay overnight." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in." And then it's got a high line in it. It's got a power line that runs right through it, and a high line. And he's like, "Do you want to try to put a food plot here?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, yes, I do."
Yes.
So, so I've already talked to Jason about that, and we got soil samples. We got soil samples. I think we went and did that Wednesday last week, and I got the bags in my garage. I need to get them shipped out. I'm gonna do that tomorrow, and then when the soil sample comes in, again, I'm gonna be calling Jason, and be like, "All right, this is what it says. What do I need to do? Because I don't know how to read this thing."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so there's another phone call incoming for you, Jason.
Yeah. No, we're all
Um,
good. Yeah, no,
but
and I'll just, I mean, and I don't want to hear more about your season, just to address kind of where you were at and where you're going. And I thought that's why this would be a cool podcast, just because there's a lot of guys out there that listen to me that are trying to learn all the steps, trying to learn to do it the right way, the evolution of a food plotter. And I think that's the evolution, right? You kind of go in and you half-ass it, pardon my
yeah,
language, right? It's like, well, I got this, and how hard can it be, right? And it's not hard, because once you get doing it and you get the steps down, it's actually really easy. But it's the same thing that a lot of guys go through. And when you do it, but you still did a bunch of work, and you're kind of pissed at the end because, well, man, I still did work and that sucked. I'm doing it right next year. Like I'm
yeah,
going to do this the right way. And I can't tell you how many guys I talk to that's exactly what happened to them. Why, yeah, it didn't work, but I'm not just going to waste my time, like I'm going to figure out and do this right, and it starts with the soil sample, and
yeah.
that's going to be the first question I ask. And, I've talked about this before, and I hope guys will consider this, Magnet Outdoors, there's soil samples out there now, 14. I see someplace, I think I've seen the lowest I've ever seen a soil sample is $10. we consider soil samples being that important. We're the lowest out there. We're not making much money at all on soil samples, but we want everybody to get a soil sample. We're selling for I think $7.95 on our website, and it's a full laboratory soil sample, exact same ones you get from everybody else. We're not cutting any corners on that. It's going to give you all the recommendations, and once you learn how to read it, it's really easy, so we'll talk you through that. That won't be tough. But yeah, that's just the first big thing, is not skipping the steps. We talk about
Yeah.
that a lot. The other thing I want to talk about that you brought up was hunting around a lot of ag. And and that's tough with food plots. Where I'm at. I had a bunch of ag, but where I got good at was having little quarter acre food plots in between the bedding and the ag, right? So that's why I just
Yeah.
encourage you, if you can find spots. Now, is all the timber, does your family own the timber? Does your camp own the timber? And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'd even consider, have you looked at timbering it at all? Like just making it super thick and, because I've seen some pictures and it looks pretty open to me. It looks like pretty mature timber. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, we have talked about it. There is right behind our cabin it's a 10 acre and it's all just heavily wooded area, and it's a lot of bedding, so we don't really wanna kinda
Yeah,
go in there and tear it up. But
for
then
sure.
again, we have talked about, clearing a little spot out, getting somebody with the bobcat in there and clearing a spot out and doing a
Yeah.
food plot right in the middle of that because I think it would be awesome in there.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd
But
wanna go right in the middle, but maybe on the edge of them coming out of that going into the corn or something,
yeah,
I'd probably because if you walk into the middle of it, like, I mean, you're gonna sit at once in the rut, all day long, but, it'd be tough. But you can hunt those thick bedding areas, on the outskirts, catch them going to that ag and stuff for sure. But, I tell guys a lot of times is, if the property, and I know you don't make all the decisions on it, but if you have a lot of really thin timber and there's no undergrowth and it's getting super, you can see, 200 yards through the timber, that's not good for whitetail,
yeah,
and that's when you want to have a timber guy come in and look and make sure you tell them what your goals are, because a lot of timber guys are going to come in and their goal is going to be, to make you money or to make them money. They might come in completely rape the land. But if you get a guy, a lot of times he's like, well, you can do this. And you say, hey, I've had so many clients. I go, okay, is this about timber value? Or is this about whitetail? Because they're two really big different things. So sometimes you get a forester come and say, listen, this isn't about my timber value in 10 years from now. This is about making this as good as I can for whitetail. And there can be differences. So it might be something that you look at, but definitely if you can get some plots, back in the woods, a little quarter acre, even eighth acre, because if you have a lot of ag around you, those smaller plots should handle the browse pressure, because
yeah,
they'll cruise through because they're gonna you're not with food plots. I tell people all the time, you're not pulling deer off corn and soybeans at certain time of the year, just like acorns, right?
yeah,
They're
yeah.
not going to. But how can you set it up that it's between there and where they want to go? So some things to consider. But yeah, but I'll let you go ahead then. Those are just two things that you said that I wanted to address. So I'll let you keep going with what the rest of your plans on your season are. If you have any shooters and any more plots that you're putting in or anything like that.
No, so those are really the only there is another spot on and it is ag. It's kind of I can't really it's hard to explain without like showing you on a map, but it's kind of down on the hill and they try to plant it every year and it just overgrows. I don't know if the sprayer doesn't know it's planted down there, the guy that comes and sprays for the weeds and stuff, because it just the weeds overtake it. And I actually talked to the farmer the other day and it's like, did you guys plant anything in there? He's like, yeah, I think we tried. And you can look at my trail cam pictures and there's no ag like it's supposed to be beans and there's no beans growing. So I talked to him and I want to spray that spot and put it and it would be a really good food plot and it is out in the sun. It's not it's out of the bedding, right outside the bedding area and between the ag. So it'd be an awesome spot for a little plot. So hopefully I can get a little plot in there. As far as shooters or anything, I I was talking to somebody last year. It's kinda like the I was joking with them or not last year, the other day, I was joking with them, and last year we sold at the trade deadline, meaning we killed all our big deer, and now it's a rebuilding year.
Yeah.
So so that's kinda where I'm at this year. I think we got I got one picture of one decent buck already, but I don't know what he's going to be. And it's kind of a blur. I need to switch the cameras around and get a better camera in there. Um, but other than that, it's all does and little bucks. So I
Yeah.
don't know. And we lost so across the road where all the big bucks are in the summer every year, where I always like you put a camera there, you're going to get big bucks all summer long. And that's where that deer was at. That's behind me. I got deer over here in the corner. That's where they were at all summer long. Um, and then they cross the road and come under the ag. In October or so, but we lost that place. The farmer leased that to some hunters, so it was 110 acres right across the road. And we lost that. So I don't have a camera over there, and I know there was a few survivors
Yeah.
out of there. So hopefully they make their way back over across the road, but
Yeah.
I'm not counting that. But like I said, we sold at the trade deadline last year, meaning we killed all the big deer that I was watching.
Yeah.
I think like all 5 of them that I was hoping would make it did not make it.
Did
So
not make it. Yeah, that makes it tough. Now, is your property one that you generally consistently have a big buck early in the season, or it's one that, man, you never, it's one of those properties you never have until the rut, and then that's when you start, or is it both? Do you usually have, I usually have one shooter or two shooters, but then the rut, I got those passer throughs, right? Those guys that are cruising
yeah.
through. Like, what's your property like?
So, like across the road where I was saying you can watch them all
Mm.
summer, and we honestly never have any bucks in the summer on where we're hunting at right now or where the cameras are at right now. The only place I can put cameras right now. And then in October they kind of cross the road and then they kind of, disperse.
Yeah.
So yes and no. Like in the summer, I kind of have an idea of like what bucks are around, but this year I don't because they're across the road still. So
Yeah.
I think I'll know more about the beginning of September. Then they'll start moving around a little bit. So that's kind of how it usually goes.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't even find sheds on our property where we
Hmm.
hunt. Like it's like they go back in the winter and then drop all their sheds back where they came
Yeah.
from. So
Is it
it's kind
super
of
thick?
weird.
Is it super thick over there? Or is that, I mean, that's, generally the big bucks wanna go in the
Yeah,
heavy
yeah,
cover.
it's a huge ravine and, like, the ditch runs through it, and it is really, really thick over there, so
Yeah,
that's kinda where they hang out at, and
yeah,
then when they come across the road, it's just ag field, and then there's literally a ditch and, like, 50 yards of woods on each side, and then it just follows along the ditch, and then, big ag fields, so
yeah, yeah. Now when do you plant?
I
You're
need
in
to
Missouri.
I need to have you come out, and you can consult for me,
Yeah, there you
sometime.
go. I mean, I'd like to look at your timber and stuff. I mean, I tell guys, everybody thinks of me as a food plot guy, but when it comes to big bucks, I'll say cover is more important than food.
Yeah,
And where the thick stuff. And I look at, I mean, the concept's pretty simple. I guess it's simple because I've been dealing with it for so long. But it's for me, if my property's all about whitetail, I want as much thick area as I can get. And then put food's easy. Covers hard,
yeah,
and doing that. So if those bucks are all staying over there and they're not there, it screams like cover to me, maybe, is whatever. Now you said you had like 10 acres of cover. Um, you know,
yeah,
and I mean, why I want, it's like, okay, why are they, because you have ag on your property too, right? You said you
yeah,
have, yeah, so, what's the difference over there than your property, right? So yeah, it'd be interesting I'll have to come out sometime and take a look and look at your timber. But the one thing you can do, and when I consult on a property, I immediately can go in and look at the woods and be like, okay, yeah, you need to get a forester in here ASAP. You can see way too far, and I've been on a lot of consults where the forester will be with me.
okay,
And foresters think different than I do, but by the time we're done with the consult, they get it, and they're thinking, most foresters are looking at it, okay, we want to create this habitat that we can get timber value every so many years. And, and I'm like, man, I was just looking at a piece of property that I was going to buy and I unfortunately didn't get it, but I walked it with a forester and it took me a while to get him to come around. I'm like, I don't care about that. I said, what you're telling me right now, I don't care. I want this area here. I'm going to hunt this from the outside in, and I want this to be as thick as it can possibly be for as long as it can possibly be, and just getting them to understand that sometimes is tough. But yeah, I mean, it tells me it's a cover issue and things like that. And if you have a lot of mature timber and you can see a long ways, it's just not doing any good for you. I mean, you just, like, what's it doing? I'd rather it be super thick and you can see, 5 yards and you clear out a food plot and you can't see anything till like, oh, there's a deer,
Yeah.
and that's where the big bucks like for sure. I mean, you've seen where I've shot 3 of my big bucks up on top of tower. I mean, it's just thick as all get out
Yeah.
all around it, and I shoot, man, there's a big shooter there almost every year, and I can almost count on it. Oh, there he is, and it's just they just feel super comfortable. But anyway, but no, that's cool. And I know, just back to the other thing, so we talked a little bit about this before. You're getting your soil samples, and we're waiting till we get those back till I tell you what to plant. But I have a feeling, when you what I learned when I started my food plot seed business was, man, I was planting my properties, and literally, I have like 30 food plots, and I was planting 90% of them with like the same 4 or 5 blends, my favorite blends, and what you'll have probably in that first year as you're working on your pH is our Simply Scatter blend, which is a great blend. I shot my biggest buck on it. People sometimes, it's got ryegrass and it's got this, it's got that, but that's, is there better cover crops than ryegrass? Absolutely. I love winter wheat. I love those, but unfortunately they're not going to grow for you in poor pH, right? In a poor pH where this is. So in that first year, I want to make certain it has brassicas, it has annual clovers. That's a great blend for those new plots, and anytime I plant a new plot, I have 3 new plots this year. One of them is an acre. Guess what? The whole thing's going to be in. It's going to be in Simply Scatter, and if I have an acre, I usually like putting 3 or 4 different things. But when it's new like that, I know it's going to grow. I know it's going to give the deer something to eat as I lime it, get the pH where it needs to be. A year or 2, I can start playing with it. But yeah, then obviously you're one of those tweeners too. We do the regional blends, the South and the North, and I'm going to have you I'm probably going to have you try our Founders North and our Founders South, which is our chicory and clover blends, just to see which does better. People call me all the time. It's like, well, man, it's hard to say once you get down there in Southern Kentucky, that's kind of the divider, and so like our Southern Founders, it has more of the intermediate clovers that are more drought tolerant, where the Northern is more of the cold resistant ladinos and things like that. So yes, I'll probably, you're right, kind of in that tweener, and I'll probably have you try both. Brassicas, have you planted many turnips or anything ever before? Did the deer eat turnips there? Have you ever planted them?
I did one year. It was like, I don't know, it was like 2014 or something like that. It was a really wet year, so the crops, they never did get, or yeah, it was a wet year. The crops never did get anything in the field.
Yeah.
And so it was just grown up fields or bare fields. And so I just kind of planted corners.
Yeah.
And I just think I just threw out, I harrowed it and threw out, I didn't, again, no soil sample, didn't fertilize, didn't do it. But it's always crop field, so the soil I assumed was decent enough to where it would grow. And I just threw out I just went down to the local seed store and just hand threw out some turnips, and I think they did grow, but I don't think they did eat them.
Yeah, and I think you're in that southern part, so we have 2 different brassica blends. We got the Brassica North, which is the turnips, the big turnips and things, and then Brassica South is more the greens. It's a later season, but you're one of those, like, I'm like, hey, try both these. See if the deer will eat them. But just in the South, it's just, they don't usually dig up the turnips like they do in the North. Once you get that cold snap, and then they'll just start digging them out of the ground. But South's a little bit different. That's why we have more of the greens. So I'm excited once we get your soil sample reports back to look and see and come up with a plan. But I'm probably going to have you test some different things just to see, because you're right on that edge. I think you're a little more Southern, and you'll probably go with some of these Southern blends a little bit more than some of the Northern ones. But no, it's cool. I mean, it sounds like you have a plan, and you don't have a buck lined up, so, hopefully you're out, I'm sure that's what you're doing now, just looking for them.
Oh yeah, it's, if anything, the farmer did tell me, he said they planted this year and they completely destroyed the beans. They had to actually replant. So he's like, go ahead and just start killing them all. So I'm like,
Kill
all right,
everything.
maybe it may just be a good doe year. So
Yeah.
trees are full year. So let the bucks rebuild.
Yeah. So I'll talk real quick, a little bit, guys like to hear this, and I'd like to hear what your strategy is. So, people ask me, like, hey, how are you finding your bucks that you shoot every year? What are you doing in this time of the year to find your bucks? And it's pretty easy for me in July. Now I got, start Magnet Outdoors. I was in Cancun the first week, the second week of July. So I got a little bit behind when I usually start, but usually July 1, I start putting corn out in front of the cameras. And just that's what I've
Mhm.
always done has been really successful for me. I just need to get a glimpse of a buck and find one, like, and I had a good one last night for the first one, but he's not even at the corn. I just caught him, back in the background, but now I know he's there, right? And so for me, July is really where I start putting out a lot of corn in front of the cameras. Just getting an inventory of what bucks are around. I also like, because our food plots aren't planted yet, and they really won't start growing. Man, you'll be looking at end of August before you have a good stand of a food plot where they're in eating it. But I like putting my corn in my food plots because it gets the deer
Yeah.
used to coming there, and that's been successful for me, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I keep corn there, and then the food plot starts to grow, and they just, then it's there, and there's always food for them, and I feel like, okay, you just get them, on that pattern, that early season, feeding pattern. But I do put a lot of corn out now, guys, and CWD areas. I'm from Pennsylvania. They can't do that, so it makes it a little bit tougher. Then you got to change. And I do this too. I'm getting on those. Find those well worn paths. Find the big food sources, the corn and the soybeans. Get on those. And get cameras up and things like that. But for me, it's a lot of corn this time of the year. Getting an inventory, finding the one that I want, the one or two, and then I branch out. I start putting cameras and figure out what he's doing, where he's coming from, where he's heading, all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's kind of what I do this time of year. Just interested to hear, what your strategy is when you're trying to track down the buck you want to hunt.
Yeah, so, Missouri is now the county I hunt is now CWD, so I can't do any of the corn or the minerals. I used to be huge into minerals, loved them, used them all the time, but now I can't do any of that, so now I'm just on the field edges. Creek crossings have been really good for me. The last year, especially, they that's where I've ended up finding a bunch of my bucks. Is we had this really good creek crossing, and it's a well-worn path right across the creek. So I put a camera on one side, and then and I know Jason makes fun of me because I love my gadgets. My little tree rubs and the rope rubs
Oh
and
gosh, yeah.
all. There's a funny story about that one too. I got one when I think you on vacation or where were you or something, and
I
I
was
got one
out,
and
yeah.
maybe it was you were elk hunting or something, and, you're like, "Whatever, just go put it up," and I put it in front of the camera, and then he texts me, like, 3 hours later, he's like, "Dude, go take that back down. I'm getting pictures," and it is, like, tripping the camera off every 5 seconds.
Out of there. Yeah.
So then I had to go get it out, but stuff like that, I kinda figured out a better way to do it where it's not tripping out your camera. You just put it a little further away so it's not
Okay.
blowing
Yep.
in the wind and stuff, and, so I put my ropes out, my tree rubs out, or my licking branches and those stuff like that, like I said, creek crossings, field edges, uh, just a bunch of I had 9 cameras, so I just put them everywhere, and then hopefully, eventually, one something will walk by it, and then you can kinda hone in from there,
Yep.
find out where he's going, where he's coming from,
That's right.
but that's kinda what I
Yeah, I tell guys July's you just need to get a picture of him, and then he's
yeah.
there. He's not far from his area right now, and
Yeah, they're not chasing does right now across
yeah,
the country,
you
so
just need to get a glimpse, and then okay, there's one, and
yeah.
then branch out from there, and that's the whole goal of just okay, there's a good one, now I got to figure out, exactly where he's coming from and what he's doing. So that's really July for me as well. But yeah, so anyway, so that's all good stuff. So hopefully we both track one down. Not now, like I hadn't had one. I got like 380 acres and I have like 15 cameras. The biggest one I have was a 4 point so far. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what in the world? Now, last night I have another piece of property and I put out a bunch of corn and I got two pretty nice ones right away. On that property and stuff. So yeah, we'll track one down. I mean, heck, I remember it was 2 years ago. I didn't have one shooter, not one shooter I wanted to shoot until 4 days before season.
Yeah.
And then he showed up every day on that tower plot, and I went up and killed him the first day of season. So, like guys start panicking. It's usually,
Oh, yeah.
like it's like I'm not saying there's not a time to panic, and and things like that. But usually, if you work hard enough at it, you can track one down. You mentioned something about being a CWD, and the selfish part of me owning a food plot seed company is, I won't get into my thoughts on CWD. I feel like it's overblown, and I feel like
Yeah.
we need to let it run its course. It's kind of like I did with COVID. Let's just, like open up and everybody's going to get this thing and let's do it. And I'm not a biologist. I'm not trying, but it feels like, EHD is a little bit different to me. I mean, it's but again, I don't know that there's anything you can do to really control it. I mean, you look at Wisconsin and what they've been doing. I think that's a whole other show. But on a selfish side, from CWD and all these states banning baiting and things like that, well, that's really good for the food plot business, because when guys can't
Yeah.
put corn in their feeders anymore, it's like, well, I'm gonna plant some food plots,
Yeah.
So that's been a good part on that end. But yeah, CWD is in PA, they got a bunch of things going on. I don't know. I kind of shake my head. I was like, what are we doing, right? But anyway, enough about that. That's a whole other topic. But you said about being the CWD, and I'm kind of like, remind me. It's like, yeah, the selfish side of me is like, man, I hope every state bans baiting and everybody's planting food plots. So
Yeah. I can go on a big long tangent about how CWD is being handled right now in the state of Missouri. So
yeah. There aren't a lot of people that, I mean, I see more and more, especially even outdoor personalities that are, guys I really respect that are smart and that are kind of saying the same thing I am. Like, what are we doing?
yeah.
What are we doing here? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out over the next several years. But yeah, I'm going to get into, you talked about your plan for the season. I'm going to talk a little bit about my plan. My plan is not a lot different than it's been other seasons. I'm planting. I'm a big proponent of diversity, planting different blends. If I have a 1/4 acre plot, I'm planting probably 2 different blends in there, probably a perennial like our Founders North, which is chicory and clover. I'll plant that with the nurse crop of oats and winter wheat. Trifecta on the other side, which is our, the 3 in that, the big ones are the brassicas, the winter wheat, and the oats. Our Simply Scatter. Anytime I have a new plot, that I'm working on the pH, I got 3 new plots. The whole plots are going in Simply Scatter, and then obviously we have the Brassica Binge North. I love that. It's a little bit more of a late season, but don't sleep on it. I've had a lot of deer in there in the early season. They start eating those greens, and things like that. So my plans are pretty much the same. The thing that I kind of did not a little bit different, I just took it to another level. Last year I really started playing with buckwheat, and planting that in the early season, then disking that in and seeding. I did that on almost every plot this year. I planted buckwheat and sorghum on almost every plot. And man, this has been an extremely wet summer and spring, and it's booming. I mean, it's blowing up, and the whole, we can do another podcast on that, but where I've really got to is it's just super good for the soil. Like I've turned strip mine dirt into some, looks like Iowa dirt, by doing that and turning it back into the soil and building that soil up. It's great for weed control. I had some thistle and dockweed problems. So the concept was, hey, I'll plant this buckwheat and it grows up faster than that, shades it out. And then all you do, I plant my buckwheat and sorghum 6 weeks before I want to plant. So if I want to plant first week of August, I'm planting my buckwheat and sorghum the 3rd week of June. And then what I do is I go in and all I simply do is disc that. It discs really easy, discs into the soil. I spray it with Gly just to kill it, because if it went to seed, and usually it goes to seed. And I learned the hard way on that. If you don't, I just answered this question today. A guy's like, do I really need to spray my buckwheat once I disc it in? Yes, you do, because I did it one year and didn't spray it. And guess what? The whole thing grew back in buckwheat. And so you need to spray it with Gly and then just seed right into it. And that was really successful for me last year. So I took that to another level this year and planted almost all my plots. And it actually makes the planting day a little bit easier. It's really easy to disc, and you're just going in there and you're disking real quick and you're seeding and you're done, and so I did that. I just took that to another level. But put in a couple new blinds here. I have 12 point, as my last show. I'm happy to have them put you remember cattail. I've always looked at that upper end. I'm like, yeah, we'll put, because it's good for a west wind. I'm like, we're gonna just waylay deer. And then that other property I have over near Knox, you were over there. We did photo shoots, I think, several times. I shot one good buck over there, but I put one of the blinds down in there. So some of that going on. I got some, people ask, I have a new spot that I'm not hesitant to put in spots where maybe there's not the perfect tree, but I like cover and I'm putting a tripod in. I've shot a lot of big deer out of
Yeah.
tripod stands. But the key is what do you have around you, right? What kind of cover do you have? So I got new pod, I'm putting a tripod in there and things like that. But yeah, that's, for me in a nutshell, that's really my plans this year. Not a lot different. I do all the steps. I limed, way back when. I'll fertilize the day that I plant, got my soil samples, know what I'm planting. And I expect as long as we, Mother Nature cooperates, we'll have another banner year of food plots. That's the plan anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not doing any new stands or anything this year. I actually jumped on the saddle train, so I'm
Okay.
gonna try that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try that this year. But as far as I mean, I don't know how that's gonna go, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna be dangling from a tree on by a rope probably. And I don't know if you've seen that Tim Allen one where he's like
Yeah.
outside the
Make
window.
sure you have make sure you have Life 360 on your phone so we know where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny, people ask me about that saddle stuff, and I'm 52. I'm like, listen, I'm set in my ways. I'm not. I look at it, and I mean, guys rant and rave about, but there's nothing better than me than going and climbing up in a nice, comfy lean on stand. And
Yeah,
I look at saddles kind of like climbers. I used a lot of climbers in the day, but man, early season you sweat your tail off, man.
yeah,
You're sweating. So like I feel like saddles a little bit of work, getting up that, I just look at it as like I'm gonna sweat. And so I'm not saying I'm opposed to them. It's just not the hunting that I need to do,
yeah,
and occasionally if I do need to be mobile, I still have a climber, but man, it's rare, that I don't
yeah.
have a stand set up somewhere that's going to work for the deer that I find. But I do see it, and there's a lot of guys they swear by it, they love it. So I'm anxious to hear how you like it.
Yeah, I'm not super excited about it, but there was a couple times last year where I'm like, "Ah, I wish I had a stand over there," and now, I can just take a saddle, like observation set or something instead of setting up a whole stand.
Oh, for sure.
But
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, do you got any bucks from last year that you may be hanging around or you're watching
I
or
do
what?
not yet, and that's what's surprising me because I had 5 bucks that I would have shot last year. Five,
Okay,
like five
okay,
4.5-year-old deer. I know I shot one, and I know my number one got killed, but there should be 3 other ones that should be absolute hammers that I don't have any pictures of yet. I'm guessing they're going to show up.
huh,
My area is a small area. I know everybody who hunts. I would think I would know if
yeah,
they're dead, unless somebody poached one or whatever. But there were at least 3 last year that I'm waiting because they're going to be hammers for sure. If
yeah,
they made it. So I'm anxious. That border plot is where I had a big giant 8. I mean, he was just a stud. I think he was a 4, and he might be a 5.5-year-old deer this year. And I'm waiting. I didn't hear of anybody getting him, and I'm just, where is he? Where is he? So not yet, but I should have because I had more last year than I had in any other year of deer that I would have shot.
yeah,
So no, not yet, but keep my fingers
yeah.
crossed.
Yeah, when you were saying you didn't have a deer yet, I'm like, I wonder if he has any from last year that I didn't know you
No,
had that many of them that you were actually watching last year.
yeah, yeah, it was 5. Yeah, 5 different ones that I'd have shot, and I was at full draw on my number one. And he, it's a long story. He's zigged and I zagged, and I never got a shot at him, but he ended up getting killed. And then I ended up shooting, I ended up shooting number 3 or 4 on the list, but he ended up being the one I focused on.
Yeah.
But there was a real big 150-inch that was limping on his left leg last year. And I didn't hear him getting shot, and a real big
Mm,
8-point and then another big 10. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping they show up. They usually do. So we'll see. Yeah.
I'm sure they're still around.
Yeah. So anyway, we're getting up to an hour here already, Soup. So
Jeez.
I do these questions, but I did want to talk about my next podcast because I'm really excited about it. Um, Guys follow me on my food plot group and other places. And I put a post the other day. I got my new seed drill from Great Plains. Great Plains is a sponsor now, and I'm super excited about it. That's an expensive piece of equipment, and you'll like this. So this is gonna be my next podcast. We're gonna talk about. But I had a guy come on, and I mean, he absolutely flipped his lid. Like he was like, "You SOB, like you always told us you'd plant food plots for the poor guy, and you just went to the dark side, and it shows how money changes people." And I'm like,
Oh boy.
"Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And I said, "Here's exactly where I'm at with food plotting, and this is what I tell guys all the time. And this is what bothers me with some other guys out there that do what I do, that they tell you this is the only way you can do it. This is if you're not doing it my way, then it's wrong and you're not doing what's best for, you're doing it wrong, because I've been planting food plots for 18 years with drag harrows, rakes, discs, tillers, and I've had just as good success as anybody else with all of them. And I've never planted with the drill, and mainly they're expensive, right? Secondly, they're hard to get to a lot of places where I plant. They just weren't real feasible for me in a lot of my areas. But what I feel like in the position that I'm at now, I feel like it's my responsibility to show guys, hey, because I do feel in all that I've read, all that I've looked at, that if you can afford it, a seed drill is probably the best thing you can do for your soil. If you're not having to disc your soil or beat your soil up every year and with a tiller, that's just not good for your soil. It's gonna, it's gonna be a negative effect. So a drill, you're not doing any of that. So I've watched that for a long time, and I feel like it's my responsibility. Like, hey, this is a way that you can plant a food plot if this is how you want to do it. So I want to tell that guy that was so mad at me, right? So mad at me. Listen, you're still going to see me plant with the Coons Engineering chisel plow. You're going to see me plant with the set of discs. You're going to see me, doing all the same things I did before. One, because, a lot of my food plots, I can't get that drill to. So I'm taking my chisel plow and a quad and I'm going up and doing it. But the point being is, and what I want to be is, as far as, people looking at me for advice, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, right? And there's lots of different ways to plant a food plot. I don't want anybody to ever think, oh, hey, this is the only way to do it. And I want to show all the ways, and here's the advantages. Here's the disadvantage. Here's the advantages of a drill. It's good for your soil. You're going to get seed depth exactly right, but what's the negative? They're expensive, right? A lot of guys aren't going to spend 14 to 25 grand on a seed drill, and that's okay. You can still plant with a yard rake, if you need to, and so anyway, so I just thought I'd address, I'm excited about the next podcast because I'm going to be learning, they're actually coming out here. Great Plains is going to be coming out to my place to help me calibrate it, make sure, because I'm looking at and reading the directions. It's a little bit confusing and different for me, and I want to make sure I do it right. But we're going to have, somebody on from Great Plains here on the next podcast to really talk about the seed drills, and they're really getting into the food plotters. They're creating some of these smaller seed drills that for a guy like me, that's, I can get a seed drill to a half acre plot, and so I'm excited about it. It came the other day and people were flipping out, and one guy flipped out, but most everybody was like, we knew you'd come over to our side. And, it's like, so anyway, so it's cool. But I do want to tell everybody that thinks I came to their side or whatever. I'm not on anybody's side. I'm just like, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and, pick the way that is, affordable and that you can do, right. And some guys say, well, I have a quad. Okay, get a chisel plow, right? Or get a drag harrow, and you can plant a food plot. It's like anything in life. Generally, the more money you spend on equipment, the easier your job is, right? If you say, well, I want to buy a yard rake and a hand sprayer and a sickle. Cool, man. You can plant a food plot with that, but it's going to take you a long time and it's going to be a lot of hard work, right? And then you step up, you do a quad and a set of discs or a chisel plow like I have, makes it quite a bit easier. Okay, now you're doing 30 food plots. And it's like, all right, well, it'd be nice to have a tractor, so as you go on and you evolve as a food plotter, it's nice to know all the different pieces of equipment, what the advantages, what the disadvantages and stuff like that. So I'm excited about that. So that's going to be coming up. And then Stoop, I have a couple questions here that I answer. I guess I'll just leave you on and you can listen to me ramble. And if you want to put anything in, but I always take a couple questions from listeners. If you're interested, before we get in these, I do need to take a quick break and say thanks to a couple sponsors. But if you want to submit a question, you can submit that at the fielddaysmedia.com website, the magnetoutdoors.com website, the All In Outdoors website. Just shoot me, hey, here's the question that I have. But we're going to come right back. I got two questions, one from Jairus in Hancock, Michigan, and Bill in Cold Springs, New York. So we'll take a quick break here and we'll be right back.
I am happy to announce a brand new sponsor here at the Field Days podcast, and it is 12 Point Hunting Blinds. And I've had the privilege of hunting out of these blinds for the last couple of years, and I was on a property consult earlier this year, and I asked my client what he did for a living, and he said he was one of the owners of 12 Point Hunting Blinds, and my eyes lit up, and I said, we need to talk. And we need to talk because these are the best blinds that I have ever hunted out of. They've thought of every little detail, from just the silent technology, the easy access, and I truly believe that their blinds are completely scent proof. I've so many times had deer directly downwind that never smelled us. So I encourage you, check them out, find out for yourself. But again, hands down, best hard-sided hunting blind I've ever hunted out of. For more information on all their blinds, visit 12pointhuntingblinds.com.
All right, Stu, we're here at the end. I got 2 questions we're going to answer. This is from Jarris in Hancock, Michigan. He says, "Hey, Jason, thanks for a great podcast. I'm a member of your Food Plots for Whitetail group. I get really confused with all the herbicide talk. So many conflicting comments. What is your suggestion for a newbie on herbicides? Thanks. I can't wait for the latest documentary coming out in September. I saw your post." All right, Jarris, appreciate that. Appreciate you watching the documentary. I appreciate the question, and it is a good question. So if you're probably not on that Food Plot group as much anymore, but it is crazy the amount of guys that have herbicide questions. What should I spray? What should I spray? And it's crazy the amount of people that give bad advice. And what I can tell you, there's a lot of different herbicides for different reasons. And I'm not going to get into that now. We'll do a podcast sometime all about herbicides. But what I tell you is you need to be very careful. I had a guy just today that a guy said, "Hey, I got a new plot. I have this. What should I spray before I plant?" And my answer always to that is you need to put, it doesn't matter what brand, 41% glyphosate. That's what you're going to spray in your food plot. Another guy comes in and he replies to me and he says, "Well, I found that Roundup Max works better at getting a kill, getting a good burn than just straight 41% glyphosate." And I immediately replied to him. I said, "Hey, that's great. I don't care what the name is, Roundup Max. I care what the ingredients are in it. And here's why." And I learned this the hard way, because in that Roundup Max, there might be 4 different ingredients. There might be, I can't even pronounce half the stuff. There might be clethodim, there might be glyphosate, there might be there might be 4 or 5 different things. Well, what guys aren't aware of is a lot of those sprays have what's called residual. And what residual means, if you spray that on your food plot, you may not be able to plant for a month to a year before something would grow. And I'm going to tell you how I learned the hard way. And I sprayed a product from Whitetail Institute called Slay, it was for broadleaf weeds. And one year I was spraying my clover plots and I came to a plot and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to seed this. And I got Arrest, which is clef, and Slay. And I'm just going to spray this plot because it'll kill the grass, it'll kill the broadleaf, and then I'll plant it here in the spring. I got all this. I don't want to dump it out and waste it. I'll just use it. Well, I don't usually not have food plots grow. Well, that food plot did not grow at all. I mean, it was like a desert. And I'm like, what the heck? I mean, what happened? And I was doing a podcast with a guy and we were talking about herbicides one time and it hit me like a lightning bolt. And he started talking about residual being in the Slay. Well, when you went and looked at it, it's like over a year that you can plant anything after you spray Slay on a clover plot. So if you have a clover plot, it's great to kill the broadleaves, but you can't then turn that clover plot off and replant it for over a year. And I had no idea. So, there are so many different herbicides for different reasons, from maintaining your clover plots to getting a kill, to plant a new food plot. But what I want to tell you all is to be very, very careful on who you're taking advice from. When somebody's saying, "I'll just spray Roundup," that doesn't mean anything to me. There's all different kinds there's Roundup Max, Roundup this, Roundup that. And guys are just going and grabbing Roundup and then they're using it and then they're planting and then their food plot doesn't grow. It's because there's a residual in that. So, and again, like, I don't want to, because there's a million different herbicides and different things, and we'll do a podcast on it, but it is a great question. And I'm not going to get into answering all of it, but, 90, anytime I'm doing a new food plot, it's 41% glyphosate. I don't care what the name is. It's a race or this, it's the generic at Tractor Supply. It doesn't matter as long as it's 41% glyphosate. When you're saying, "Oh, Roundup Max and this and that," like, man, I need to know what the ingredients are to be able to tell you what to do. So the point being is, with herbicides, and Jarris, it's a great question. I'm sorry I can't get in and answer every possible scenario, but you need to be really careful of what advice you're taking from guys online, because you can really screw things up pretty easy. So anyway, Kyle, you probably don't have anything to add on that. I don't know if you do, if you had any bad experiences or not, but it'll be good for you to know that when you start doing herbicides, just don't go to Home Depot and say, "Okay, hey, this says kill everything, Roundup, kill it all. Okay, that's what I'm going to put on my, to kill my food plot." Then you do it, then you plant and nothing grows. Well, you know what? That had a residual in it that nothing's going to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about that, but I do know I have wondered about that, if you spray, because 'cause we're getting ready to start a new food plot and it's grown up with weeds, and I guess the first step that we're gonna do is spray to kill all that stuff before we disc it or whatever.
Yep.
Um,
Well,
I
yeah,
have
I know.
wondered if
Yeah, you wanted to talk about that. I think you said you wanted
yeah,
me to take you through step by step. So I'll do that here quick. It's pretty easy what I do and what I recommend to guys. You getting your pen? so so for me, I want to plant the first week of August, right? So about a month out, I'll go in and I'll mow all my food plots first. I won't spray them.
okay,
I'll mow them. And then what I'll do is like 7 days later, I'll go in and I'll spray when it starts to grow back, right? It starts to grow back. You have that new foliage. You'll just get a better burn that way. So I'll mow. I'll wait 7 to 10 days. I'll go in and spray. And then I will simply come back when I'm ready to disc and plant August, that first week of August. And then I'll disc or chisel plow or whatever and I'll plant. Now, there were years that I would and you can do this, but you're really beating up your soil. There'll be guys that will come in, they'll spray, they'll kill, they'll come in, they'll disc, and they'll come back and they'll spray again. And then they'll just
I've heard
drag
of
it.
that.
Yeah, because you're not bringing up that weed seed. Now,
Yeah,
for me, I've been successful doing it that way, but man, if doing 30 food plots and going back over and over and over again, it didn't seem like there was that big of a difference. But if you have a few food plots, it wouldn't hurt you to move that process up and then go in and disc it and then go back, let it start growing back weeds and just hit it with gly, when it starts growing back weeds. And then a week later, just go in, you could drag it with the drag harrow and seed your food plot. That makes
okay.
sense.
So if you do it that way, mow, 7 day spray, then disc and plant. When do you put your fertilizer in?
My fertilizer.
Yeah,
Yeah, fertilizer is the day that you plant.
day
And
that you
I always
plant.
tell guys like this, the thing about fertilizer, I had a guy said, I limed and fertilized and I'm planting in 3 months. Well, all you did with that fertilizer was fertilize weeds. Like it doesn't
Oh,
do anything to change your
okay,
soil.
that
So
makes sense.
you put the fertilizer down the day that you seed because you're fertilizing the seed. And if there's weed seed, you're doing that. But the goal is hopefully that your seed's going to get up ahead of those weeds and shade it all out,
And
right?
choke it
Yeah.
out.
But if you fertilize, you say, oh, hey, I came in and I'm here. I'm just going to fertilize now because I can do it. But if you do that, all you're doing is giving the weeds a head start.
Okay.
So you want to fertilize the day that you seed. And then there's a lot of guys, I've never done that much. And you see my food plots. A lot of guys then maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, will hit it again with fertilizer. But I've never really done that and had great success the way I do it. So
Yeah. You would think I would know all this after working with you for 4 years, but
you were in a
I was
daze.
co
Yeah.
I was
You're just like,
concentrating more on
oh
pictures and
God,
video.
more food plot stuff.
It's like, "Oh, let me pour out the bag, I'll get the video."
Home stretch, Kyle. Home stretch.
Home stretch.
Oh, all right. So did that answer your questions on that then on the steps?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, they're really
Yep.
pretty
I got
easy.
them
Now
all wrote I got 'em wrote down.
you want a soil sample. Now I always tell people it's best to soil sample in like October, because then you can lime. You want to lime like 4 or 5 months
Yeah.
before you plant, if you can. I rarely get the soil sampling during hunting season. I almost always soil sample in the spring. Usually get it limed like 3 months out. I've had a lot, guys flip out at me. I have to use a lot of Pell lime because it's just difficult for me to get ag lime. If you can get ag lime to your plots, do that. But if you can't, your Pell lime, and I never disc it in, but I've had old farmers, you should always disc your lime in. So if you're there and you have a couple plots and you want to disc your lime in, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's more or less the steps, that you're at right now is, I'd go in, get it mowed, then wait like 7 days, spray it, and then you can go back and disc and plant.
Oh, okay. Yep,
All
that
right,
answers.
cool. All right. So last question I had, and then we're gonna wrap it up. This is Bill from Cold Springs, New York. Jason, congrats on the new seed company. I've been following you for years and we'll be planting your blends this year. Awesome. Thanks, Bill. My question is, if you could plant only one blend, what would it be? And I'm gonna be honest, I can't answer that question because you hear me preach all the time diversity. Like I think when I first started food plotting, I think I planted a blend. I'm like, they love it. I'm planting the whole property in this. It's gonna be awesome. And it wasn't near as awesome as what I thought it could be. And over the years, I just realized it's impossible to predict what the deer are going to eat at certain times of the year, right? It's you just don't know. Did the farmer plant soybeans? Did he plant corn? When they're coming off the soybeans, is there a big acorn drop? One year we didn't have any acorns. Man, they ate all the food plots. They loved them, right? But like if there's a lot of acorns, there's so many variables that can affect what deer are eating and keying on at a certain time. Like I said before earlier, you're not going to compete at certain times of the year with corn soybeans or acorns with your food plots, so get those food plots between where they want to go to that corn and soybeans. But for me, it's really about diversity. I want to plant a lot of different things. If I have over a quarter acre plot, I'm splitting it in two. I'm putting an annual blend in one side and a perennial blend in the other. And hopefully there's something there for the deer to eat all year long that they want to come there, right? And so and it's good for the soil. There's a lot of other reasons for diversity. If you ask me what my favorite, if I had to give you what my favorite blend is, right? Favorite blend's always the one you shot your buck on. I mean, right? I shot my buck on a trifecta plot last year, and so trifecta was just it's one I've been tweaking with. I always loved the combination of brassica and oats. Oats are a great early season attractant. They grow quickly, and then they'll go to those brassicas. What I notice a lot of times here in PA is sometimes those oats would burn out a little bit before the deer were on the brassicas. And by adding the winter wheat to the blend, man, you have another great early season and late season. And I planted that old blend that I like that used to be my favorite side by side with our trifecta and watch deer walk through it to get to
Mm.
it. So for me, if you made me pick, hey, you got to plant one blend. That's the only thing you can plant, in your one food plot. What's it going to be? And if the pH and stuff was good, I'd probably pick trifecta. But I love Founders. I love Simply Scatter. I love Brassica Binge. And I'll let you know after this year, whatever I shoot my buck on, that might be my new favorite. So anyway, so hopefully that answers the question. But I don't know. Kyle, do you have a favorite blend, or you're just kind of getting into it?
I mean, I am kind of just getting into it, but I like anything with the turnips or whatever. It's like I like watching them, and just because it looks cool to me on film is when they eat those big leafy greens, and it's
Yeah.
just, and then you can see it go down their throat.
Yeah. 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 I
So
do love
that's
seeing that big gulp going down as they're just
yeah,
hammering on it. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I'd tell you too, you definitely, I preach this, guys, you need to have at least 30 to 40% of your property in perennials, and the nice thing for you, Kyle, with perennials like our Founders North or Founders South, if you take care of it, it'll last you 4 or 5 years, and the deer hammer it, now you're in a, kind of a hot area and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see, how your perennials will do and stuff. But I'd encourage you, I've shot many, you were here, the big 150 I shot, that was in a chicory and clover plot. I've
yeah.
shot some really good deer in chicory and clover. And so, so it's hard for me to say what my favorite is. I whatever I shoot my deer in that year is going to be my favorite. But last year it was trifecta. So that's it for now. Yeah.
I like
So,
it.
yep. So anyway, so we're an hour and 15 minutes, Kyle. I thought this was going to be a short one, but here we are. Do you have anything you want to say to guys? I mean, it's getting that time of year. Any advice you have to give on, I don't care, filming, getting out, enjoying yourself, being a good dad? I don't care. You got any advice to give anybody?
Being a good dad, I don't know. I don't. uh, no, I don't know. Just keep on pushing. Summer's almost over. That's the only advice I can.
Yep.
It's fixing to be 100 degrees for the next like 2 weeks here. So I'm already miserable, and I just can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
That's weird because all week I just looked at the forecast. We don't get out of the 70s all this next week.
Oh,
I was just like,
lucky.
wow. Yeah. I mean, because it's been
Oh,
hot, but yeah, I walked out the other day. It's like, oh, feels like hunting season. No. Yeah.
yeah. No, we literally just started a excessive heat warning for the next like 2 weeks.
Ugh, yuck.
It's
Yeah.
hot and dry. 100 like
Uh,
I think it doesn't get below 95. I mean, I think it's probably already 80 out there right now at 9 o'clock in the morning. So
yeah, yuck. Well, have fun with that. So
yeah.
anyway, and I think there's a lot of good things here, from a guy who's trying to film his hunts. I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your knowledge on all that stuff. And we'll have you back. We'll have you back sometime when we'll see what your results are. I'm anxious to get your soil samples, and then we'll figure out what we're going to plant and all that good stuff and go from there. But I'd say to guys, now is the time, between getting the food plots ready to plant, doing the steps. Don't cut corners, right? Like that's just how I don't cut corners. I'm
Yeah.
like I said, I'm with Magnet Outdoors now. I have these TV show guys calling me, and that's the first thing I'm finding out. Do these guys cut corners, or do they do all the steps? Because I don't want guys who cut corners because that a lot of times is going to lead to failure. So I started being really successful when I didn't cut corners. So yeah, don't cut corners, grind it out, whether it's filming, whether it's hunting, whether it's planting food plots, because embrace the grind. I love it. I learned, used to not like it. It's like, oh man, but now I kind of, man, let's get ready. Let's grind it out. So looking forward to grinding it out this year. Maybe I'll shoot one the first day like I did a couple years ago and not have to hunt 60 times like I did last year. But who knows, man.
And then you can come out to Missouri and hunt with me.
That'd be cool. Yeah, get those plots and we'll whack one over one of those. But anyway,
That'd
we're
be
gonna
awesome.
wrap. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here, Kyle. I appreciate you being on here, and like I said, we'll have you back. And hopefully we have lots of pictures of good looking food plots and they grew well for you, and we'll have you back on. We'll talk about your progress and your evolution as a food plotter. But thanks so much for being on the show.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, I'll be documenting all the food plot stuff on my YouTube channel if I can plug that real quick.
Yep, you good.
KLC Media on YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. So all my new food plot and Jason's knowledge I might even film a phone call and be like, hey, what do I do here?
There
So
you go. Yep.
all that'll be
Awesome.
on there. Jason, thanks for having me on here. This was awesome. It's been a lot of fun. I can't believe we're already an hour and 15 minutes in.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I appreciate it. And last two things I have. Remember the whitetail extravaganza, the habitat extravaganza. You can get tickets at magnetoutdoors.com. While I was sitting here, just sold 6 more tickets I saw pop up. So they're going
Awesome.
fast, and we're gonna turn it loose to my Amish friends here soon. So you better hurry up and get your tickets online before it sells out. And yeah, so I appreciate everybody. And I do want to say real quick, I appreciate the start of Magnet Outdoors has been awesome. I was talking to my partners, Wilson and Steve Scott, and we were going over the numbers, and they were blown away because we only started on July 1. Nobody ever heard of Magnet Outdoors before, and things like that. So for us to be starting in July 1 and where we're at. So I want to thank everybody that's bought seed, that's reached out in any way. Thank you so much for supporting that. I do really, really appreciate it. I appreciate the guys that listen to the podcast. And that's it. I'm going to stop rambling, get out there, get some work done. And Kyle, I appreciate you being here again, and we'll talk to everybody again on the next field days.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.